Hey there guys, and welcome to podcast number 3 in the End Zone UK. Thanks for joining us once again. My name's Dom and I am leading this podcast, and as ever with me across the table is Big Dave. How you doing, Big Dave?
Yeah, I'm good. All good. How are you?
Yeah, I'm very well. Could be better if the Seahawks had won, but we are where we are.
Welcome to a Giants life.
Yeah, so we had some good football this week. It was a bit of a weird one though. Weird one for sure. The weird one was the amount of kicks that won games.
Yeah, there was loads.
Yeah.
Kicks that won games, kicks that didn't win games, or missed kicks that didn't win games, and penalties galore. I think they're setting a record at the minute for the amount of penalties they've thrown per game. Some games, like the Seahawks game, there were so many flags in that.
There was indeed. So yeah, this week we had 4 games, out of the total of the weeks that were decided by field goals. The Tennessee Titans versus the Seahawks was clinched by a game-winning field goal in overtime, which broke my soul, metaphorically and physically. I felt my soul leave my body. Washington versus the Giants.
Yeah, that was decided by a field goal. Unfortunately, one of the players jumped offside after a missed field goal, giving them a closer attempt, and slotted it through.
The Cowboys Chargers also won by a field goal there. Cowboys just edging it with a very, very long field goal at the end of regulation.
Some real bad coaching in that one.
And then the probably the most dramatic one of them all, a really easy kick by the Minnesota Vikings kicker against the Cardinals to clinch what was a very, very exciting game, and he shanked it right, and it's just another one of those woes for the Vikings. They are always on the bad end of bad kickers. So this week was a massive kick in the balls for me as a Seahawks fan. We dominated first half and then we let it go downhill. And I'd imagine you felt pretty similar with the Giants game, did you, Dave?
Yeah, I'm going to say this, but I think we were robbed. I think so Daniel Jones had a big 65-yard run that was pulled back for it. That was for a touchdown. It was pulled back for a very, very dubious holding call against one of the wide receivers, and then the field goal at the end, and it looked like it was a clear offside at the start, but he looking back, or having the hindsight and the ability to have a look at replays, he actually didn't jump. He jumped after the ball was snapped, but cost us the game and
pissed you off.
Yeah, it did.
No, I felt for you. I felt for you in that one. It was the Giants played a better game. We'll get to it when we do our on the clock segment, but I will have to say, the Giants played a better game. It's a shame that Darius Slayton couldn't catch that ball towards the end. It was a catch that just needed to be made by a receiver. But irrespective of that, Daniel Jones had a cracking game, and it's a shame that you didn't come away with a win. It really is. But that's where you are. That's football. You got to pounce on the chances, and you're always going to get calls against you. It's definitely a difficult one. But there was some. I thought it was a bit more of a boring week than week 1.
Yeah, the first. I think the Giants game on Thursday night was good. I thought with the Washington football team, but the 6 o'clock kickoffs were dull.
Yeah.
There's no way to describe it other than that. There were some poor games, just very, very average. It just wasn't exciting.
No, I was sat there thinking. I was like, has the buzz worn off? Week 1 buzz is a big one, and I was sat there thinking, maybe the buzz has worn off, or maybe it's just these games are a bit shit. And I think it was the latter, to be honest. The calibre of those games, and I think it was heightened by the fact that when it went into the 9 o'clock window, they were absolute stormers. Yeah, every single game was an absolute stormer. Yeah. Seahawks game looked like it was out of reach for the Titans, and they brought it back. That was, credit where credit's due to the coaching to stick with the run game with big old Derrick Henry, and the Cardinals game was even more dramatic. He looks like the real deal.
Yeah, he's he plays the same way he plays all the time, doesn't he? He escapes out of the pocket, runs around a little bit, and then throws to a wide open receiver. think Rondale Moore benefited like a 70+ yard touchdown off the back of a scramble, and once the coverage breaks down on the back end, the wide receivers are open. He took it to the house. But yeah, no, they're looking very strong. Although they should have lost the game if the Vikings kicker could see where he was kicking. But
you said last week about Rondale Moore.
Yeah,
he was one of your picks, eh?
Strange.
You were saying he was fast. He looked electric. Looked to have a lot of juice in his step, and then there he was with a, what was it, 77-yarder?
Yeah, something like that. Yeah, he was just looking good. But I mean, how can you not look good when you've got DeAndre Hopkins? You know, you've got AJ Green in that offense.
Mm-hmm.
It's just, I think it's easy to get lost as a receiver in an offense like that. But yeah, he's proven his worth drafting.
For sure. Cool. Well, before we get to, excuse me, I'm clearing my throat. I've got some kind of lurgy, and I've had it for about a week since we did the last podcast. So trying to fight through, but it's causing me all sorts of issues. So I'm going to keep clearing my throat, and hopefully post production we can edit those out. So before we take a jump into our on the clock segment where we look at all the games, I've got a couple of questions for you, Dave. New exciting segment for us here.
Go for it.
I'm going to go with it's a little bit like, you know, like kiss, marry, kill, or snog, marry, avoid.
Yep.
But I'm just going to go with two.
I always avoid them.
And I always snog them. A little bit of insight into my personal life there. Anyway, we'll get back to what my new segment will be, which is sign or slap.
Okay.
Sign or slap. So you have to pick a player this week that you would love to sign to the Giants, and a player that you would just love to slap, like a proper backhand smack.
Wow.
Okay. And we're going to do AFC and NFC. All right, I've not thought about this either.
No,
so my picks are
dropped straight on with this.
Oh, what they are. So sign or slap. So just top of your head this week, based on this week alone in the AFC, who would you sign to the New York Giants roster?
Sign JC Jackson.
JC Jackson.
Yeah.
Cornerback at the Patriots.
Yeah. So the Giants were meant to be going into the league with a top 10 defense this year. It certainly was top 10 at the end of last year, but they've disappeared, and that's going to lead me on to who I'm going to slap. And I'm not going to slap a player, I'm going to slap a coach. I'm going to slap Patrick Graham, our defensive coordinator, because he's playing some woeful schemes at the minute. So I'd sign JC Jackson because Adoree Jackson, who we signed in the off-season, has been pathetic, and he would fit in nicely against Bradbury, who's also not looked great. He had 100 yards put on him this weekend by Terry McLaurin, but he did come up with a pick at a vital time that should have been enough for us to sort of drown the clock out. But yeah, I'm going to slap Patrick Graham. He needs to come up with some more. He needs to come up with some better play calls on defense, because we're letting up way too many yards at the minute and too many points. Nice.
Okay. So terms and conditions of the rules of this game were AFC, NFC. So you give me one of each. So you need to flip it around.
Right.
So you have given me a defensive NFC slap.
Yep.
And you've given me a sign from the AFC, from the Patriots, JC Jackson, who is a very, very elite corner at the moment. Always finds the ball, always picking balls. I would absolutely love him on the Seahawks as well, but this is not my question, it's yours. So you need to give me two more.
So I need to give you a slap from the AFC.
Yeah, somebody
and a sign from the NFC. Okay, so the slap from the AFC will be Josh Allen, because at the minute he's not that. The Bills are looking all right, but Josh Allen hasn't played well at all in the first two games. And coming off last season when he was getting MVP votes, he certainly needs to sort of refine that form that he had at the end of last season, because at the minute he's playing bang average football and he's getting pulled for it by some of his other players. Mm-hmm. And who am I going to slap from the AFC? I'd slap Bill Belichick, just because it's Bill Belichick, and although we dominated him twice in the Super Bowl, I just don't really like him.
Fair play. I will ask that question to myself.
And I'll ask it.
Okay, you go for it.
I'll ask it. So, Dom, who from the AFC are you going to sign to the Seahawks, who need a lot of players, and who are you going to slap?
Okay. So from the AFC, I would sign Myles Garrett.
Okay.
I'd sign Myles Garrett. He's looking pretty phenomenal. He didn't have a huge stat line in the Browns game, but he is making a hassle of himself. He really gives that Browns defense a chance, always in the quarterback's face. And let's face it, the Seahawks need a pass rusher. I've said at the very start of the season, I felt like Myles Garrett was going to be my Defensive Player of the Year pick. Still stand by it, albeit a quiet week this week, but we're week 2, so he's got plenty of chance. I would sign Myles Garrett, and I think he's just one of the players that currently make the Browns team a very, very tough team to beat, albeit they've got a few injury woes as of this week, which we'll talk about later. So Myles Garrett, for me, is who I'd sign, and in the AFC, who I would slap. I think this is fair. He deserves a slap, and it caused me a little bit of heartache because I love the Chiefs. But Clyde Edwards-Helaire fumbling on the final, or what could have been the final drive to win the game for the Chiefs, just let the ball go, which allowed the Ravens to sit on the ball and kill the clock. I'd give him a right good slap. He should have got one when he got to the locker room anyway, because you can't be doing that in the last minute of a game. So that's my 2.
Happy days. What about in the NFC?
So NFC, slap has to go to Greg Joseph. Has to go to Greg Joseph of the Minnesota Vikings, the kicker who missed the kick to win the game. So it was the easiest kick of his day, pretty much. I think he'd nailed from 50-something, 40-something, and this was a 35 or something like that. That should be pretty automatic for a professional kicker. He needs a slap. He lost the game, and not only that, but I detest the Cardinals and I detest Kyler Murray, no matter how good he looks, and that just kind of broke my spirits when they missed that kick. They got themselves into a perfect position to win the game. So he'd get a big slap. And who I'd sign from the NFC right now, I'd probably have to go for Christian McCaffrey, who I would sign from the NFC at the Panthers, the running back. He's come back off an injury, and he looks as electric as ever, and the Seahawks would just be such a different team with a running back that can actually take the top off defenses, receive out of the backfield. I feel like it'd be a perfect weapon for Russell Wilson. So Christian McCaffrey would be signed. That's who I'm rolling with.
Yeah, it's a good sign. I don't think there's many teams that wouldn't want Christian McCaffrey in the backfield, especially coming off an injury, and he's having the season that he's having. The Panthers look good. The Panthers look good.
Very surprised how good the Panthers look.
Looks very good.
He does. That's what you get when you're not on the Jets.
Yeah, and the Panthers' O-line's looking. The offensive line's looking very good. It's keeping him protected, opening the holes for McCaffrey to run through.
Yep, they're looking good. Right, so we'll go into our On the Clock segment now, where we're going to look at all of the games that were played last week, give a little bit of information about them, and tell me what you think, Dave. First game we'll look at is the Broncos playing the Jacksonville Jaguars. So Denver Broncos versus Jacksonville Jaguars. What was that game like?
Yeah, it's all right. I mean, I think Teddy Bridgewater is looking pretty good at the Broncos, very steady. And Trevor Lawrence I think he's struggling, but he's struggling because his team is absolutely woeful. So I don't think anybody's expecting them to do anything big. They're probably a 3-win team at most this season. They're going to be picking in the top 3, I think. But game-wise, the Broncos are what they are. They're a bit of a boring team to watch. They're a savage on defense. They're a real menace. Patriots Jets, who they drafted in the first round, he's I think they drafted him 8th overall or 9th overall.
Yeah, cornerback.
He's very good. He's a big-bodied defender, which is what you want against some of the receivers. But no, they're a tic-tac-toe down the field kind of team, just throwing it 5-6 yards, and then suddenly he'll erupt and pop one over the top.
He did it again, Bridgewater though. 328 yards, 2 touchdowns. He was very efficient. What pissed you off last week, he's just gone and done it again against the Jaguars. It just looked a little bit too easy for the Broncos. I'm not sure what that is. I don't think the Broncos they're not that good a team, are they? They're not that good.
No, I mean, they're a sort of running back by committee kind of team.
Are they a playoff team?
I think they're going to be, yeah. Well, I mean, they've started off pretty well, haven't they? They're 2-0, and it's been they've not been close. I know they've not played good teams. They played the Giants obviously first, and it pains me to say we're not a good team because we're not looking like one at all. And then they've beat up on the Jags. I don't know. Teddy Bridgewater's efficient, isn't he? So what more can you say? They get the job done. He's thrown for over 300 yards now, so like twice pretty much.
So yeah, that game ended Broncos 23, Jaguars 13. Anyway, didn't ever really look like the Jaguars were gonna do much. And actually, their one major score came from a big kick return, right?
Yeah, that's right.
102-yard return.
I think that was the first quarter, and then they didn't score again until the last quarter. So
yeah, so it was pretty woeful performance from the Jaguars overall. And fair play to the Broncos. Got to give them credit. They're winning games. The defense looks strong. If Teddy Bridgewater just needs to throw that ball 5 yards an attempt, feel free. Right, the next game we'll look at was, I guess, more of an interesting one than I thought it was going to be, but the outcome was the same nevertheless. The Cleveland Browns against the Texans, Houston Texans. So that game finished 31 to the Browns, 21 to the Texans. How's that one, Dave? What do you reckon?
Yeah, I think everyone pretty much knew the Browns would win. But the Texans are a lot better than I think what people thought they were. I think a lot of people thought they would be like a 17, like an 0-17, 1-16 kind of team, especially without their star quarterback. They've given all the best players away for about 3 picks. It just doesn't look like they've got anybody. But I mean, they won the first game against. It was the Jags they beat the first game. Yeah. So they beat a bad team there, but they're a bad team. They're just camouflaging it. I think
they'll get exposed soon, won't they?
Yeah, I mean the Browns put in 31 points. Like if you concede in 31 points, it's not great. But yeah, Tyrod Taylor's looking. Obviously, he's injured now, but he looked all right. To be fair, in the first sort of like game and a half that he's played, he's looked pretty good. But obviously, he's injured now. Injured again. He was injured last season. And a doctor pierced his lung with a needle. But no, I think the Browns took care of business. They did what they needed to do. They got the ball on the floor and just sort of ran the clock out.
Yeah, they ran all over the Texans for sure. Nick Chubb touchdown, nearly 100 yards. Kareem Hunt had a few yards as well on the ground. It was pretty clinical display by the Browns. I think they never, like I said, they never looked like it was in major trouble. Even when it was, I think it was 14-all by the half or something like that.
Yeah, that's right.
I think that it was always just coming. It felt like when they needed to, they could get a stop against the Texans, but it didn't feel like the Texans could get a stop against the Browns. Some interesting stuff in the game though. Like Baker went down. I think he said that, or apparently he said that he tackled somebody after throwing an interception and he popped his shoulder out, dislocated it, and then popped it back in.
Yeah, that's what it looked like as well when you saw the footage of him going off the field, holding his shoulder. It looked like it was out of place, just limp, hanging there. So to come back in, I mean, it wasn't his throwing arm, which is good for him, but still not what you want from your quarterback.
It's a bit scary for the Browns, though, isn't it? Like,
for sure.
The last thing you want to see is your franchise quarterback dislocate an arm middle of the game when you feel like your team is potentially a playoff team. So yes, and then the Texans. I mean, Philip Lindsay looks pretty explosive. I know that at the Broncos he was all right. Philip Lindsay, the running back or one of the many running backs for the Houston Texans, but that touchdown that he scored was a little tasty. It was quite nice. A little bit of a dink and dunk, and then a little shift move into the end zone. It looked pretty sweet.
Yeah, I like Lindsay. I liked him. I've had him a couple of years in the fantasy. He was an undrafted free agent. I think he went in, when he went to the Broncos. And I'm very surprised they didn't keep hold of him. But he's at the Texans now. It looked all right. But I mean, there's the 1-2 punch that the Browns have got at the running back position. It's easily the best 1-2 in the league. There's nobody even close to it. Both of them are like a 1+, like A-star running backs. The stuff that Kareem Hunt did when he was at the Chiefs, and now he's happy to play second fiddle to Nick Chubb. But yeah,
what I'd do for either one of those at the Seahawks, honestly. it'd be fantastic. So, I mean, it was a good game, but at the end of the day, the outcome was always written in the stars. I think it was always coming with the Browns. So, good game between them two. Next game that we'll talk about is the Buffalo Bills playing the Miami Dolphins. This was a 35-0 big fat goose egg, 0 on the board for the Dolphins, blowout by the Bills.
Yeah, what can you say? Josh Allen owns the. I think if you check on Wikipedia, Josh Allen's one of the owners of the Miami Dolphins. He's yet to lose to him, and like I say, I don't think he's playing anywhere near. I want to say thankfully for the Dolphins, but they got slapped either way. But he's not playing anywhere near the standard he was playing at last season. But they just ran all over him. They had 3 rushing touchdowns.
Yeah.
The Dolphins couldn't do anything. They've got some good players on. They've got some good pieces on defense, but just couldn't manage to stop in any way, shape or form the Bills, and couldn't get anything going through the air.
Yeah. So Devin Singletary had a touchdown for the Buffalo Bills, and then it was Zach Moss?
Yeah.
Zach Moss had 2. I actually looked at both of those in fantasy, and I thought, because they share snaps, that I didn't go with either of them, but going with one of them would have been better than some of my other choices, so that's a lesson learned. But Josh Allen, to me, still looks like I think he's under more pressure this year, isn't he? So last year it was a breakout year for him. People didn't expect him to make the leap and the jump that he made, and now this year everybody is going like, oh, watch Josh Allen, watch out, like watch what he can do, and pressure's there, and not all players can necessarily live up to the standard, and certainly the standard that he played with last year was, a fraction off MVP quality. You can't push that out every year, can you? So as long as he's efficient, he had 179 yards, 2 touchdowns in this game. I think that's good enough for the Bills, especially, and I suppose we haven't spoke about it, but they didn't concede a point.
No.
0 on the board for the Bills defense. So like that's outstanding, considering they held the Steelers last week to 0 points up until the third quarter as well.
Yeah.
So that's phenomenal.
No, they're a very good team. They're going to be a contender in the AFC division, AFC conference. Sorry, I think they've shown that they're the big boys in the AFC East now. That the Patriots have had their day. The Bills are definitely the top dog there. So yeah, I mean a win. I think they both got now. The Dolphins beat the Patriots. They both got a division win. But the Bills, they're going to take some stopping in that AFC side.
For sure.
The top 3 probably teams in the AFC.
Yeah, absolutely. Another kind of big story to come out of that game was Tua Tagovailoa went down. So their quarterback, second year, expecting bigger things from him, and he's gone down with broken ribs.
Yeah, he came into the league with an injury.
Yeah, it was a hip, wasn't it?
Yeah, like if he had a dislocated hip or something when he was in college. But yeah, this seems to be a bit of a trend of some of the quarterbacks where they're a little bit injury prone. But yeah, he played. I think he attempted 4 passes, then he was out of the game, and then Jacoby Brissett.
He's terrible.
Yeah,
he's terrible.
If you can't put points up as a quarterback in the NFL,
no, it's not good.
You're in the wrong league, I think, and it's such a competitive league for the Bills to shut them out. For the Dolphins to score no points.
It's a bit of a statement, isn't it?
Yeah, they need to be embarrassed.
I mean, Tua got hit. Did you see the hit?
Yeah.
He got absolutely nailed. So,
the Patriots held. It might have been last year. It might have been the year before. The Patriots shut the Dolphins out as well.
Did they?
So they've had a couple of shutouts, and in the space of the last few years. So.
It doesn't say a lot about a team, does it? If you can absolutely put no points on the board. But I mean, Jacoby Brissett, he last year, I think the extent of his play time was 6 quarterback sneaks.
Yeah.
That was it. No. He didn't do anything more than that, and he'd have probably done better if he'd have just quarterback sneaked the whole way this game.
100%. Snail up the pitch. Yeah.
I think that's enough to talk about in that game because there really wasn't too much happening. Another game that was interesting but for different reasons, we'll talk about the Cincinnati Bengals playing the Chicago Bears. So that one finished Cincinnati 17, Chicago 20. So the Bears just edged that one to go 1-1 in their division. Bengals also now 1-1 in their division in the AFC. What did you take from that game?
that Andy Dalton is not a starting quarterback.
True.
And that Justin Fields has got the potential. He's got the potential, like we said in the very first podcast, to be the starter there. He just adds a more dynamic feel, and I feel like for the Bears, the Andy Dalton injury, which we'll go on to talk about in a little bit, is going to be a blessing in disguise because it will get Justin Fields on the pitch. He's been named as the starter for this week, so
that's exciting for the Bears.
Yeah, 100%. I mean the Bears haven't had a lot to. After having Mitch Trubisky, I mean, I know they've had a couple of playoff runs with Mitch Trubisky, but they've had a couple of playoff games with Mitch Trubisky. But Justin Fields is a dynamic playmaker, and that's something that they've definitely been missing.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that when I first saw it, when Andy Dalton pulled up with his injury, I thought it was a bit scripted. Like it felt too good to be true. It felt too good to be true that Andy Dalton was going down. It was whilst he was running out to the sideline sort of injury. He didn't get a big hit. It wasn't anything like that. It was just he just pulled up and was all of a sudden hurt. And I was thinking, you can't write this stuff. You're like, Andy Dalton has been named the starter controversially in front of a very big prospect in the NFL, one of the top picks of the draft of the year, and all of a sudden it's like, oh, it's his time now. Like I felt good because I was thinking, damn straight, get him in, but they didn't even put him in straight away. They carried on playing Dalton through like a little bit of a lower leg injury, and I was just thinking, what more does it take? But it did feel a bit scripted. It felt like this is the time, and maybe that's just a little bit of fate, and it does happen. It happened a long time ago to Tom Brady. He got his chance through an injury that was, a decision to put him in because the original quarterback was injured, and it's happened a number of times since, and then never looked back. Same with Dak Prescott, even same with Russell Wilson at one point. So I think that it's just Justin Fields' chance now. I think he needs to be fearless. I think in the next game, he just needs to know that he's a rookie quarterback. He's coming in to do a job, but he can just do so many things that Dalton can't.
Yeah, he's got that sort of like X factor that he's got the ability to escape out the pocket. You're right. He can just make so many more plays than Andy Dalton, I think his time's pretty much done as a starter in the league. I can't see there's many teams that will want him to come in. He was pretty awful last year for the Cowboys. The Bengals don't want him, and if the Bengals don't want you, then
you may as well give up.
Pretty much. Speaking of the Bengals, I mean Burrow was. I feel like he's taken a little bit of a step back on last year from what he was. He threw 3 picks, so 3 interceptions this game. Mixon didn't have a great game either.
No,
but but all that being said, they were still in it right towards the end. Jamar Chase had another long touchdown. So the Bengals are slowly improving. I think starting to turn the corner.
It was a quiet game for them though. I felt like on the red zone watching that one, and then just having a look at the game in 40, there was really not a lot to shout about. So it was one of those games that we kind of knew on paper was going to be distinctly average, and that's exactly how it turned out to be. Another game that we'll look at that, in my opinion, was pretty distinctly average is the Rams. So the LA Rams against the Indianapolis Colts. That one was. It was pretty level, actually, throughout the majority of that game. It finished Rams 27, Colts 24. So, we're talking within 3 points. It was just, for me, not the game that I thought it would be. The Seahawks pretty much dismantled the Colts the week before. And I thought, if the Rams are going to make a statement, this needs to be a low-scoring game for the Colts and a high-scoring game for the Rams. But it really wasn't. And actually, the score itself, 3 points between the two, the Colts went down to the end zone and actually probably I think it was to like the 5-yard line. They went down there 3 times and came away with no points.
Yeah.
0. They went for it on 4th down. I mean, it does say something about the Rams defense. It says that it's a savage and it will stop you if you get close. But still, the fact that they got there, they could have kicked those. They could have kicked each one of those. They'd have won the game.
Yeah, that comes down to coaching, doesn't it? I mean, if you kick 3 field goals there, you instead of losing by 3 points, you're winning by 6. I think there's been a little bit of dubious coaching going on at the start of the year so far, especially in the red zone where people are teams are trying to go for either 2 points after the conversion or going for it on fourth down and coming up short still.
Yeah, it's quite aggressive, isn't it? But it's not paying off.
No, and I think you've got to be very content with your red zone, sort of like your red zone plays that you've got in the playbook, and if they're not working, then just take the extra point or take the 3 points and have a go at getting back down there. I just think to get to the red zone 3 times and come away with no points, that's coaching.
It's unforgivable. It's unforgivable. Yeah. Like as a professional football team, number one, you shouldn't be going for those plays if you don't think that they're possible. But the plays that they chose, I can't remember. Forgive me, I can't remember the plays, but they were all nothing plays. You've got weapons on that side of the ball with the Colts. You've got a big, stout offensive line. You got what you can pick from 3 running backs that are all arguably number 1 running backs. And I think that they tried to pass it with Carson Wentz, let him roll out the pocket. He got absolutely stuffed. And that's not a surprise. You're going to get stuffed by Aaron Donald. He stuffs everyone. Never mind stuffing Carson Wentz. So I think for me, I was frustrated, watching that game because I wanted the Colts to win, because it would have been fantastic for our division to just level things up. But it just didn't happen. And Carson Wentz went almost back to his Eagles time. Carson Wentz. He didn't look exciting, and then look at him. He's gone down. He's literally made of glass, made of actual glass.
Ankle, I think he's got 2 sprained ankles.
Sprained both of his ankles. What is that about?
Yeah, he's not very bussed in the slightest.
No, sprained both of his ankles. I saw the tackle where he did it. I've seen many men get hit much harder, and he just doesn't seem like he's got it in him to just stay on the pitch.
No, and I think that's going to be ultimately his downfall. I think because you can't build a franchise around a quarterback that can't stay on the pitch, and it's just the Colts team is pretty good, and like I say, to have a quarterback that. Well, I mean, there's a few quarterbacks that have been down this weekend and that are injured and probably out for a few games, but sprained ankles, you just throw the ball away. You don't take the hit. If you get hit by Aaron Donald, he's going to sprain your ankles.
That's a problem. He's going to snap you in half, especially when you're built like Carson Wentz. So, yeah, that wasn't great. I mean, there's some good plays in the game. A massive defensive. Well, I say massive defensive play. It was actually an offensive error, wasn't it, from the Rams team, the punter.
Yeah.
The snap came off one of the guys who was supposed to be blocking on the offensive punt, hit him in the thigh, rolled into the end zone, and was scooped up for a Colts touchdown.
Yeah.
That's not good for the Rams.
Teams, yeah. Issues on special teams, and we've seen it many times with teams, whether it's either muff punts or return men dropping the ball. You've got to be swept up on your special teams, because they're the kind of points that you can't afford to give up in the NFL, especially if you want to get to the Super Bowl or get to the playoffs, get to the Super Bowl and win the Super Bowl. You need to have a flawless team, and I think flawless as best as you can. And mistakes such as that, where he's moved from the protection's moved from the right hand side to the left hand side, but he's not moved over far enough, and it hits his thigh or elbow, whatever it's hit, and it's cost your team 7 points.
That was the turning point. I thought at that point, I was thinking, that's it. This is the Colts' chance, and I was a firm Colts fan at this point. I was just thinking, just get the job done, and they really couldn't. And I mean, that was partly due to the fact that Cooper Kupp had an absolute day. He had 9 receptions for 163 yards, 2 touchdowns. I mean, he doesn't look special, does he? He looks like some Amish bloke who just likes to run.
He looks distinctly average, but he's definitely not.
No.
But he's been the same guy for like the last 3 or 4 years. He just makes magic. He can catch, and it's his run after catch. I think that's what's so special about him. He averaged 18 yards a catch. 18 yards.
Yeah, that's a lot. That's not good if you're a defense.
Yeah, I mean so they're of their main sort of like people who had receptions, three of them were above 10. So you got 12 yards, 18 yards, 14 yards, and Darrell Henderson, the running back, was averaging 9.7 yards a catch.
That's nuts.
Insane.
Do you reckon that's Matty Stafford? Is that to do that? Goff wouldn't have been putting up that kind of averages, would he?
Probably not, but I mean, it's a lot of that is run after catch, so it's getting them. So it's them receivers getting open, and whether that's the quarterback moving the defenders with his eyes. It's a few things go into that, but Matt Stafford's definitely an improvement.
Yeah, for sure. So the Rams won that one, much to my dismay, considering that all the other NFC West teams also won, bar the Seahawks. We will now look at the Raiders. The Las Vegas Raiders played the Pittsburgh Steelers, and the Raiders go 2-0 and beat the Steelers 26-17. What do you reckon to that one?
I think they just exposed the Steelers. The Raiders, they have a habit of doing this with Derek Carr. He plays amazing for 4 or 5 weeks, sort of MVP level play from the quarterback, and then they'll come up against the Chiefs and they'll get drilled, and then that'll be it. But I think it's more of an exposure of the Steelers than it is anything else. The Steelers were undefeated for so many games last year, and then it all just came crashing down.
Yeah, I mean they gave up 382 passing yards to Derek Carr, 2 touchdowns through the air. That's not the elite Steelers defense that you would say is scaring everybody. They're not going to get to the playoffs with that kind of play. And then, okay, Ben Roethlisberger, Big Ben, he had 295 yards. That's a fair amount of yards, 1 touchdown. But every time I watch him, I just feel like he's the linchpin, but like the bad one. I feel like he's the rusty nail, I feel like he's the person that is going to be the downfall of the Steelers. And I said it. Yeah. I said it a couple of weeks ago. I'll say it again. I genuinely do think that it is time for that old big man to sit down on the sideline, coach somebody new, help a new quarterback into the locker room, and just sail off into that sweet good night, because he's not good anymore. He's got no zip on his balls. He's probably just got that veteran presence that people think is better to have on an offense. But for me, it's not. No, he puts dangerous balls into his receivers' hands, and he relies on very, very good catches to be made to make those yards. If you look at majority of the catches last week, majority of the catches this week, you're talking like acrobatics to catch these catches. Like they're not standard catches. They're coming down after going up, high pointing the ball. I know I'm ranting, but I just think Big Ben is just absolute tosh.
Yeah, he needs to hang it up. He's his stats aren't bad. 27 of 40.
I mean, that's crap.
Yeah, I mean the percentage ain't great, but 295 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception, and 94 QBR. That's not bad. But he doesn't pass the eye test. When you watch him play, he doesn't look like he's throwing for 300 yards.
No, he don't.
His balls. He's got his arm's gone. His mind might still be there, and he can still move the defenses around, and he can provide his linemen with the right protection, call the right protection calls and stuff. But he hasn't got it, and they've got no run game. Their run game is atrocious.
Mm-hmm.
Their first round pick, Najee Harris, 38 yards off 10 attempts.
That's terrible, isn't it?
I mean, they're not. So what's that? 11, 12, 14 rush attempts was all they had, and 2 of those attempts were wide receivers.
Yeah.
So you're not winning games. You need to if you Steelers football is rough.
Yeah, it's
ground and pound, and they're not doing that. They're relying on Big Ben's arm, which he's not got anymore, which is why like they just don't look good.
No.
And that's.
I mean, last week Najee Harris played every snap and he averaged 2.7 yards a carry. This week, 3.8 yards a carry. That's. He had a decent receiving touchdown out the back where he made a few yards and broke a couple of tackles. He looked good, but I think behind Big Ben, who doesn't scare anybody nowadays, I think his money's made in that backfield if they get a new dynamic quarterback. If they don't, you can just sit there and wait for him.
Yeah, they've not got. Even the receivers don't look great. No one. Juju had a very, very distinctly average day, 41 yards. Chase ball 17. Deontay Johnson had 105, but I think,
Then on the opposite side of the ball, you got Derek Carr doing 382 yards and putting 113 on Henry Ruggs.
Yeah.
For an absolute bomb, because he has got wheels.
Yeah,
He's
well,
rapid.
I mean, well, it doesn't look like there was much rushing from either side, to be honest with you.
No,
But
well, Josh Jacobs was out with an injury, so that's their main threat for the Raiders running back, much to my fantasy dismay.
Yeah, you look at the receptions. I mean, he had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 different receivers, and he spread it around pretty well. Henry Ruggs 5 receptions, Waller 5 receptions, Renfro 5 receptions, Drake 5, 3, 2. You know what I mean?
He's spreading that ball.
Yeah,
big time.
Finding different receivers, which is good because it keeps the defenses guessing, which is why you can get people open.
Yeah.
Like I say, Henry Ruggs just got a jetpack on and he just goes.
Okay, so the next game we're going to talk about this one very briefly because there was nothing to really talk about, is the Patriots Jets. So the Patriots played the Jets. It was a little bit of a snore fest and finished 25-6. Zach Wilson threw about 1 million picks, and Mac Jones looks like he's still the better quarterback to come out of the draft. Anything else worth talking about, Dave? It was just a game of defense for Patriots, wasn't it?
Yeah, pretty much. 4 picks from Zach Wilson's not great. He's thrown a lot now. I think he needs to be less flashy and just try and get the fundamentals down. Otherwise, he's going to end up throwing about. He's going to set a rookie record. I think he's on pace now for about 40 odd picks, which ain't great.
No, that's not what you want from a Jets fan base for sure. There's not too much else to talk about in that one, I don't think. So we'll leave that one alone. But fair play to the Patriots for getting the win. They're 1-1 in the division. Jets, unsurprisingly, go to 0-2. Next game was probably a surprise to a lot of people. It was a little bit of a surprise to me, but then I suppose the more you watch, the more you'll be less surprised, if that even makes sense. But this was the New Orleans Saints playing the Carolina Panthers. So the Saints rolled all over the Packers last week, absolutely dismantled the Packers last week. And going into this game week, you'd say, okay, Panthers, they've got a reasonable team. They won their first game, but it was actually the opposite. The Panthers went in there and dismantled the Saints. How did that happen?
Yeah, they were. The Saints come out flat. The Jameis Winston, I don't know, like his issue was before that he used to throw picks. He got a little bit back into that, his Bucs kind of mindset. And the Sam Darnold Panthers look pretty good. I mean, Christian McCaffrey absolutely dominated the game. And I think he's a big reason as to why they're 2-0.
No, for sure. I mean, this stat line is mad. Christian McCaffrey had more yards on his own, all-purpose, than the whole of the Saints' offense. Yeah. The whole game. So how do you beat that? McCaffrey had more yards than the whole of the Saints. You
definitely can't. He's a next level.
He's special.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, not too much else happened in that game. It was just a bit of an offensive letdown for the Saints. Jameis Winston throwing picks whilst he was trying to make something happen. Alvin Kamara was held to nothing. Jameis Winston, probably rushed as much as he did, and Christian McCaffrey kind of stole the show. But then Sam Darnold threw 300 yards and 2 touchdowns. He's definitely flourishing in Carolina as opposed to when he was in New York. So we'll see what happens with the Panthers, but the Saints need a big game. Shut out for 3 quarters and only scoring 7 points is not good. On to another game that was a bit of a stinker as well. So the San Francisco 49ers played the Philadelphia Eagles. This one was a very low scoring game, finished 17 to the Niners, 11 to the Eagles. This was a nothing game for me. As much as I really wanted the Eagles to win, and that is a very, very rarity, this is just because the Niners are in the Seahawks division. They still walk out of what was a dismal game on both sides, and the Niners still come out 2-0. I was not impressed with anything that I saw in that game at all. Not impressed by the quarterbacks, not impressed by the running backs, not impressed by the defense. There was nothing to get excited about at all.
No, and the injury woes again continue for the 49ers. The running back I think it's the rookie running back they had that was replacing Raheem Mostert. He's now injured.
He's injured?
Yeah. So
didn't know that.
Yeah, I'm not sure if it's a major injury, but
still.
In fact, the only reason I know he's injured is because it's my fantasy and he's injured. So
right.
Yeah, I mean, it kind of is what it is. I'm glad the Eagles lost from a Giants point of view, but it was not a fun game to watch. And I'm glad I didn't see much the full game, to be honest.
Yeah, I really didn't watch much of this one either. There was no point. like I said, not a lot came out of this game. I think the biggest thing to come out of the game for the Eagles is that Brandon Graham, their star defensive end, is injured and probably out for the season. They reckon it's a potential Achilles injury, which is probably the worst one you can get, lower leg.
Oh, yeah, 100%, yeah.
If it is an Achilles tear, he's out for the season and potentially into next year, and maybe forever, because the man is not young. So, okay, that's enough about that one. I think next we talk about the GOAT, Tom Brady, the man himself, for the Buccaneers, Tampa Bay, playing the Atlanta Falcons. So this one ended up 48 to the Bucs, 25 to the Falcons. What do you take from that scoreline, Dave?
The Falcons are as bad as everybody thought. The defense is awful. There was defensive scores for the Bucs.
2 back to back.
Yeah. The Falcons are awful. I'm glad, because we're playing them this week. I could really do with us getting a win. No, I mean, Tom Brady is what he is, and he finds his receivers. He's him and Gronk are on this sort of like telepathic wave that nobody else can be on. They're approaching the number one QB receiver touchdown record. I think they're 12 off that now. That could easily be done this season.
Yeah, definitely.
Gronk at the minute scoring 2 touchdowns a game.
Gronk's looking amazing, isn't he?
Yeah.
Like, he's so weird because he doesn't look like he's moving fast. He doesn't look like that he's particularly explosive, but he just gets open and scores touchdowns for fun.
Yeah, and he uses the blocking game really well. So he'll block, and because he's so good at blocking, when he's blocking defenders, he'll release off the block, push into the end zone. He's an absolute animal in the red zone. And I think that's where all 4 of his touchdowns have come from. Yeah. I think Brady's like 9-0, as in like 9 touchdowns, no interceptions so far this year. He's easily setting the pace for the MVP at the minute. Yeah. I know it's very, very early on, but if he can continue to play like this, the Bucs are looking unstoppable, because not only is the defense starting to get to where it was at the end of last year, their offense is absolutely continuing, and it's destroying teams. 48 points against the Falcons.
Yeah, it's too much. It's too much to try and contain, and like you say, Brady is just unstoppable at the moment, and he seems to just be. Him and Gronk have already got that connection, haven't they? They've always had it since the Patriots days, but the fact that they've been able to like reignite it in a new system, in a new place, and not only that, but who do you cover when you're playing the Bucs? If you cover Gronk, if you cover him and you put a linebacker on him, it's no good. He's too big, he's too fast. You put a corner on him, he's too big. But not if you double team him, you've got Mike Evans, who is one of the most uncoverable receivers in the NFL anyway. And if you put more people on him, you've got Godwin, you've got OJ Howard, you've got Leonard Fournette. Like, you can't load the box and cover people.
Yeah. Cameron Brate. Yeah. Antonio Brown.
Oh my! I didn't even think about AB.
Scotty Miller. He's got every single person. Ronald Jones. He's got every conceivable weapon going. He's got 3 great tight ends, 3 great wide receivers, 1 very good wide receiver, 2 very good running backs, and he's got this offensive line that's just a brick wall that can't be. Yeah. I mean, built by the Germans. You know what I mean? It's like they know how to build walls, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I was saying to a mate earlier this week, Brady at the Patriots, obviously the most winning quarterback, won so many Super Bowls. He did that with, at times, a very distinctly average offense. Yeah. He has got a distinctly supersonic offense at the moment, and so that just scares me, because I just think he used to make the janitor look good. Like, you could have put the janitor on the pitch as a wide receiver and he'd have scored 7 touchdowns. Now he's got Mike Evans, Antonio Brown, some of the most arguably best wide receiver talents to come out of the league in 5-6 years. It's crazy, and then their defense just pops out with 2 defensive scores, interceptions, and 14 points.
Killed the. I mean, the Falcons were never in shot of winning it, but the defensive scores they made Matt Ryan, who's a very good quarterback, look very, very average.
Yeah, they did. And Brady sits there with 276 yards 5 touchdowns, 9 on the year. If he keeps that pace up, he's just destroying people. Do you reckon he could keep playing? Do you reckon he's better now? Do you reckon Brady's better now than he was 7 years ago at the Patriots? Would you rather have him now, or would you rather have 7 years ago Brady?
I don't know, because his team now is a lot better than anything he's ever had. So he's having to do less with more.
That's
Whereas
fair.
as before, obviously, he had to do more work because he had less receivers. I mean, he's always had Julian Edelman. Well, for the last sort of 10 years, he had him.
I'd rather have him now.
I think
I would personally. I like him now. I used to hated him.
Well, he's
I used to hate him, but
Patriots,
I'd have him now because I think he's eased up. Like he's a lot more laid back, and not only, like, I'm not saying I'd have him now just because he's more laid back, but I feel like that's translated into his game, and he's definitely trying to not get hit. He's throwing the ball away. He's making less mistakes. He didn't really make any, but I'd rather have him now. I feel like he looks way more dangerous now.
He's definitely. I mean, he's probably still deflating footballs, isn't he? But other than that,
He could be.
Yeah, bugging people's locker rooms. But I think he's. He's the goat, isn't he? But he's. I don't know. He couldn't be Eli Manning, so what? He can't be that good, can he?
Dave and Eli Manning, Christ. Right, okay. On that Eli Manning note, we'll move on to another game. We'll quickly talk about the Vikings playing the Cardinals. So the Minnesota Vikings playing the Arizona Cardinals. This one was a thriller. Finished 33-34. Vikings lost 33. Cardinals won 34. So this was the one that we were talking about earlier. One of the missed kicks of the week, missed kicks of the year. It will end up being big thing to miss at this stage of the competition early in the league. It means that the Vikings go to 0-2, so they've not won a game. And not only that, but it pisses me off because it means that the Cardinals, when they should have lost and we should be on an equal standing with them, ended up winning. And it just felt like that was the tail of the game. Everything was going the Cardinals' way, irrespective of how well the Vikings played, and they did. They got to him. He got sacked 3 times by Daniil Hunter. He was still coming up with those miracle plays, but the Vikings were also scoring. I don't know. I was let down by that. I was not happy with the way it ended. And kickers shouldn't be missing from 35 yards. Like that should be automatic. I'm very opinionated on it because I just think Kyler Murray's a douche, and I don't like his playing style. But that's because I'm a Seahawks fan.
Yeah, well, Kyler Murray missed 7 passes all game. 29 for 36 for 400 yards.
I don't give a shit.
3 touchdowns and 2 picks. So only 5 of those passes that he missed hit the floor, which is pretty good. I know Dom doesn't like him, but I don't mind him. I don't like his play style, but ever heard of Max Williams? No, I don't think you have.
Nope.
He had 94 yards. Rondell Moore, 114. Christian Kirk, 30. Like, his receivers dug out blind for him.
Yeah.
But that being said, Kirk Cousins, he's having a quietly good start to the season.
He's being Kirk Cousins, though, isn't he? He's being Kirk Cousins. He'll fall off soon. He'll have a shitter. I hope he has one this week because we're playing
22
Vikings.
completions for 244 yards, 3 touchdowns and no interceptions.
Yeah, that's a day. That is a day, especially for Kirk Cousins.
Hey, he was averaging 17.5 yards a carry on his runs. On his 2 runs, 35 yards. Yeah, no, I think it's frustrating for the Vikings because Dalvin Cook, who's clearly got injured on on one of the plays, he kept coming back into the game. Every time he'd break off a run, he was on the floor injured. He rushed 131 yards, averaging 6 yards a run, which is exactly what you need from your running back. Kirk tried to help him out. He's throwing for 3 touchdowns. I mean, the kickers cost him there.
Yeah, big time. I mean, the Vikings did everything they needed to do to stay in it. And it's Nick Virgil for the Vikings. I mean, who is he? Who put 10p in him?
No idea.
He was absolutely destroying the Cardinals on defense. He had that interception that was it was a fumble that was overturned. Right, yeah. Then he had an interception for a touchdown. I mean, he had a game as well as the whole Vikings defense had a game. They were just beat by the big plays again. The the Kyler Murray magic that
just shows that you can't just chase him out of the pocket. You need to finish the play. Get your hands on him. And I'd even say, like, I know it's not in the rules, but even a hard hit on him right at the start, even if it draws a 15-yarder, just to let him know that if he rushes outside the pocket, that he's going to get hit and hurt. I think if you just chase him around and then he escapes and throws down the pitch, I mean, even if he does that, give him a good hit, let him know he's in a game of football. You're probably going to get a 15-yarder, but
that's worth it. I'd be all right with that. I'd take a 60-yarder if I could nail Kyler Murray to the ground. Anyway, so that one finished 33-34, win for the Cardinals. On to the next one, which is a game that we don't really need to talk too much about, and I don't want to either because it's the Dallas Cowboys. So they played the Chargers. In my opinion, this was a bit of an upset. I did expect the Chargers to beat the Cowboys, but actually the Cowboys won with another game-winning kick, literally as the clock expired. So the Cowboys won 20-17. It was a bit of a nothing game. Dak Prescott didn't really impress. They decided to go with a different approach to the way that they played the Bucs. It was a bit of a ground and pound. Tony Pollard and Ezekiel Elliott both had reasonably decent days on the ground. Pollard looking actually like the better of the two, which is quite surprising actually, because Zeke's the big name on that Cowboys offense, but Tony Pollard is sneaky explosive. And then Justin Herbert threw for 338 yards and a touch. So, yeah, it was a bit of a nothing game, and it's a shame that it came down to a kick for the Cowboys to win, because nobody likes to see the Cowboys win except Cowboys fans. But yeah, that's not too much to take from it from my perspective. I think that the Chargers let themselves down.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. Next game.
Cool. That's how much Dave wants to talk about the Cowboys. Cool. We've got one more game, I think, before we talk about both of our individual teams. So last game, statement game, needed to be a statement game. The Detroit Lions, or Detroit, I don't know why I say Detroit. The Detroit Lions played the Green Bay Packers. So the Packers got destroyed last week by the New Orleans Saints. This week they come in and they roll the Lions 35-17. Never looked in doubt, albeit the Lions started strong, but the second half, Packers pulled away. What do you reckon to that one, Dave?
Yeah, I think we both said that Aaron Rodgers was gonna. He got a lot of criticism, I think, in the press and stuff like that, and that's not. He's very. I feel like he's very sensitive to stuff like that. So I kind of thought that he would come out and put a number on the Lions. He's got a very good record against the Lions, and he did just that. He absolutely tore them apart. It's Aaron Rodgers, isn't it?
Yeah. He
had an Aaron Rodgers performance, which was great for my fantasy, but
not good for me.
No, that's true. But no, his stat line, like, he's 22 of 27, 255 yards, 4 touchdowns.
Yeah, that's
QBR of 156.3. You literally cannot get much better than that.
That's like he was last year, isn't it? That's just efficient, missing few passes, scoring loads of touchdowns. I mean, a couple of them were kind of like shovel passes or little dinks out to Aaron Jones, who also had a monster of a game. Aaron Jones looked good, actually. I'm definitely one of those. I'm not his biggest fan. I'm probably one of his biggest critics, to be honest. I always thought that Aaron Jones is one of those running backs that sneaks in the 3 yards, sneaks in the 2 yard touchdowns because his quarterback gets him close enough. But in all honesty, he's obviously a good back, and this week he proved it. He dominated those Lions on the ground, and from a different perspective, Jared Goff doesn't look horrendous.
No, it's surprising how good he actually looks behind the Lions. I mean, their offensive line's pretty good. It's holding up pretty well, and he's doing bits. I mean, they're not winning games, are they? So it ultimately doesn't matter. But
no, but he doesn't look terrible. Like watching him and seeing the other, a number of other quarterbacks in the NFL, I would take Jared Goff over, a large handful of them. And before the season, I maybe wouldn't have. I maybe thought that he was
he's definitely
a Sean McVay special, but he's looking good.
His stock's definitely rising. I can't see him being on the Lions forever. I think he'll move to a better team when his contract's up. And he probably deserves it. Nobody deserves to be on the Lions. TJ
Hockenson, do you think would you start talking about him as a top 5 tight end yet?
Oh, yeah, I thought it was anyway.
Yeah?
Yeah, he's a great tight end. I think the issue is he's the only real weapon on that team outside of one of the running backs, but he's a solid if he was on the Packers or if he was on the Chiefs, everybody would be talking about him.
Yeah, for sure.
He's mobile. He's very quick.
Yeah.
He's good. He can catch and he can block as well, which is what makes for a good tight end. It's what you want.
No, he's all round for sure. So that was the Packers and Lions. It was a destructive win for the Packers in the end, and they did deserve it with how they played. So good news for the Packers fans. Good news for our good mate Cam, who will be pleased that the Packers now go to 1-1 and the Lions drop to 0-2. Right, last game before we talk about our own games, and it was a hell of a game actually. This was the Ravens from Baltimore playing the Chiefs from Kansas City. Take it away, Dave.
Yeah, it was a good game actually. To be fair, I'm not a huge fan of the Chiefs.
I am,
but so I do quite like to see them lose. But no, what a game and what a way to finishing on a fumble. Pretty much the the Chiefs running back Clyde Edwards-Helaire fumbles the ball on a drive for the Chiefs to take the lead, and I think that's pretty much, if I'm honest, the only way that you can stop the Chiefs is by takeaways, and the Ravens did that. The Ravens scored 12 points in the fourth quarter and held the Chiefs to no points. It was the first time Patrick Mahomes has lost in September since he's been in the league.
First interception he threw in September as well.
Yeah, so he's had a good game. Lamar Jackson, some might say he's a running back. If you're throwing 2 picks and one touchdown, maybe you are, especially if you're running for 107 yards.
Yeah.
But no, they did what they needed to do, and they did what the Browns should have done in the first game to get the win, which is just control the clock. You've got to assume that the Chiefs, because they've got so many weapons, that they're very much like the Bucs. They've got so many weapons that you've got to just assume that they're going to score 7 points on every drive. So you've got to kill the clock, you've got to score on absolutely every drive, and just to get the win. They're such a dominating force, the Chiefs are, that I'm kind of glad the Ravens won, because Lamar Jackson hadn't beaten Patrick Mahomes yet, so it was his first win against him. It was a good game. Yeah,
no, it was a good game, and as a substitute Chiefs fan, I would have to say that the Ravens did exactly what they needed to do to win that game. Just kind of like the week before, the Chiefs have had a tough run playing the Browns and playing the Ravens. They're two teams that are going to run the ball on you, and they can as well, which is, on paper, one of the Achilles heels of the Chiefs, I would say. And Mahomes had a day. 343 yards through the air, 3 touchdowns, 1 interception, which was, he was trying to work some magic at the end of the game. He got tackled as he threw the ball, so it was arguably a lucky pick. But Clyde Edwards-Helaire, he doesn't look quite like the player that he looked at the beginning of last year. He definitely needs a slap, as I said earlier. You can't be fumbling the ball when your team needs to score. So it's all the more reason for me as a Chiefs coach to keep the ball in Mahomes' hands, because the guy really doesn't set too much of a foot wrong. Travis Kelce dominated again, 7 receptions, 109 yards, 1 touchdown. He's on pace to equal his record-setting year from last year. So the Chiefs look great, but credit where credit's due to the Ravens. I mean, I'm not a huge fan of Lamar Jackson. I think, the running game that they have built around him is efficient and effective. I don't feel like it's proper football, but that's the way things are going. And so the Ravens, with all of the injury woes that they had leading into the game or into the season, they've done a fantastic job to beat the Chiefs. It's never easy to beat the Chiefs or even hang with the Chiefs, and they've done that. So I think massive props needs to go to Lamar. Massive props needs to go to, is it Jim or John Harbaugh?
John
Harbaugh, the coach of the Or is it Jim? It's either Jim or John. Sorry, Jim, or sorry, John. But it's massive props needs to go to him. I quite liked the if you have a look on YouTube or on NFL.com, and I quite like the footage of Harbaugh yelling to Mahomes on the side of the pitch, "Do you want to go for it on fourth? Do you want to go for it?" You know, there was a few seconds left in the game. The Chiefs would have had an opportunity to go down the field and score, and let's be honest, probably would have. If they'd have not converted that fourth down, and Lamar Jackson was very confident by saying, "Yeah, let's go for it." And it was a nice moment between a coach and a quarterback, both having trust in each other. They went for the fourth down. They got the fourth down. They iced the game. Fair play, Ravens. Well done. I think the Chiefs come back this week and make an absolute statement that they're still the number one in the AFC. They just had a bit of an unlucky day.
Yeah, agreed. The Chiefs are going to go on a run. I mean, they play the NFC East. We have to play them this year, so there's 3 wins from right there, pretty much. Well, 4 wins. Mm-hmm. Well, 3 because the Giants will beat them, but 4 wins for them there. They're going to be there, they're going to be in the AFC Championship game 100%. It's generally who they're going to play against, and maybe it's going to be the Ravens, maybe it's going to be the Bills. You just don't know. Maybe
it's going to be the Titans.
It could definitely be the Titans.
And that leads us on to the penultimate game, which was the Seattle Seahawks playing the Tennessee Titans. So, Dave, do you want to start this off and I'll finish it?
Yeah, let's go then. Yeah, so I was watching this before I had to drive back to work. So I saw maybe the first half and the Seahawks were dominating. I was getting frustrated because Derrick Henry is my bell cow in my fantasy, and he was doing about as much as me sat on the settee. So watching it, the Seahawks were dominating. The defense was looking good. There was stuff in the run. Russell Wilson was being Russell Wilson. Tyler Lockett is proving that he's one of the top receivers in the league. He's outperforming DK Metcalf at the minute, which I quite like, because I think DK looks like a cross between a drag queen and Scottie Pippen. I'm interested to see what happens with that, because if DK doesn't get the receptions that maybe Tyler Lockett's getting, I want to see what his personality is, whether he's gonna cry or not. But no, they were playing well. I mean, they weren't getting much in the way of the run game from Chris Carson as per normal, and I do think the Seahawks with a productive running back would be a dominant team. But no, the Titans got back to work 3 hours later. I looked at my fantasy. I was like, where these 40-odd points come from? Oh, Derrick Henry's arrived. Derrick Henry, 35 rushes for 182 yards and 3 rushing touchdowns. I mean, it's Derrick Henry, innit? When he turns up, he turns up. And I think it's just it's kind of, I mean,
it's a matter of time, innit?
Yeah, he just wears down defenses, and then when he finds a crack, I mean, one particular play was, I think it might have been his first touchdown. The play was like stretch right, so that the Tannehill handed it off to Derrick Henry. He rushed right, nothing was there. Changed direction to the left, outran everybody. I mean, this guy's 6'3", weighs 265 pounds, and he's outrunning cornerbacks. The man's an animal. He outran everybody else to the far corner, went in for the touchdown, and that seemed to be the turning point where Derrick just took over. And then when you've got a running back that's so dominant that can break off 60-yard rushes for touchdowns, and not only is he just bleeding the clock every time he gets it for 6-7 yards, there's just not a lot you can do about it. If you can't stop him, then there's just not a lot you can do. I mean, Ryan Tannehill had 347 yards passing off 27 attempts.
Yeah, we got destroyed in the second half. I mean, if I can talk about it for a minute, and I'm not going to spend too much time on it, because it was a little bit of a heartbreaking loss in the fact that you don't like to see your team lose, but at the same time, I don't actually take it away from the Titans. I'm not sat about saying I think that, oh well, we should have fucking won, we deserved it. First half we absolutely did. First half, their best player on the field was held to 35 yards, Derrick Henry, and then he finishes with 182 and 3 touchdowns. It felt inevitable, it really did, and our defense did, in my opinion, everything they could to stop Derrick Henry. Bobby Wagner had potentially the game of his life. Literally, the game of his life. He tackled 20 times in that game. He got a sack. He had a pass defended. You know, I love Bobby Wagner. I think he is the best linebacker in the NFL and has been for a fair few years. But he just kept hitting Derrick Henry. And they both just like two beasts of men just kept getting up off the turf like, let's go again. And it was like they just kept running at each other, clashing into each other. And unfortunately, you know, Derrick Henry's younger. He's got a big offensive line pushing for him. And, you know, he came out on top. But credit to Bobby Wagner. Absolutely immense player. And he just couldn't do enough. Derrick Henry seemed inevitable by the end of that game. Whether you want to call him Thanos or whatever, he was inevitable. And it was just a shame. But the Titans had some questionable calls against them, actually, which meant that they would have pulled away even further. A Julio Jones reception in the end zone probably was a touchdown. It was called back, but it probably was one. If I'm not a Seahawks fan, I'm saying it's a touchdown. But it was, you know, that's another 7 points they could have had. In overtime, Russell Wilson was tackled in the end zone that should have been a walk-off safety. So there was a number of times where Seahawks couldn't have won the game. However, in the first half, we dominated. In the first half, we could have won the game there. We could have sealed the deal. You know, we had them pegged. They had scored 9 points to our 24 in the first half. Russell Wilson still looks phenomenal. You know, I can't take that away from him. He was asked to do a lot in the overtime section of the game. He was asked to pass the ball 3 times from inside his own end zone or inside, you know, our own 20-yard line. So that wasn't great. Chris Carson didn't look good, as you said, Dave. It was a tough game for him, albeit he scored touchdowns, you know, 2 touchdowns. But he must just be sat looking at Derrick Henry on the other side of the pitch thinking, oh, I wish I was you. I wish I was you, because who doesn't? So overall, it was a disappointing game. There are some positives to take from that game from a Seahawks perspective. You know, everybody gets dumped on by Derrick Henry at some point. It is inevitable, but I think we just need to roll into our next game and know what we can achieve. Like you said, Russell Wilson is doing special things with Tyler Lockett. If we can stretch that field with DK a bit more, that's where our real strength comes from. Our defense just needs to gain some stamina. We need 6 Bobby Wagners, basically.
Yeah, no, it's tough, and I think on the other side of calls that went against your team or went kind of for your team, I suppose, if you're a Titans fan, or if you're a Seahawks fan, sorry, the touchdown in the end zone was.
Yeah, it was probably a touchdown.
Yeah, I mean. But.
Anyway, we move on. And we move forward, and hopefully the Seahawks can get a win this week against the Vikings. Last but not least, by surely no means least, we're in this position again where I asked Dave how he feels about a very tough Giants loss to the Washington football team. How did you feel, Dave? Or do you want me to talk first? Whilst you contain your rage?
No, I'm good. I'm good to go. Yeah, no, it's another frustrating one. I mean, I was frustrated with the defence after the first game because they were absolutely woeful, but I mean, they were no better in this game, definitely not. But our one shining light, I suppose, and maybe he does listen to the podcast, that's why Daniel Jones turned up for me. He had a very good game. I mean, to be fair to the Washington football team, Heineke, who's their quarterback, who I've said should have started for them from the start, he played very well as well. But I'm not here to talk about the football team. I'll let Dom do that. So I mean, it was a tough loss because I feel like we could have won it. We lost it on penalties on the final drive. So the left tackle had a penalty that he had a false start, cost us 5 yards. Then the right tackle had a false start that cost us 5 yards. Then the ball gets thrown to Slayton, who drops it in the end zone, and that would have sealed it. You know, Daniel Jones had 95 rushing yards, and that doesn't include a 60-yard rush that got pulled back for a hold that wasn't a hold, in my opinion, and most people's opinion. It didn't look like a hold to me. But I suppose the only person it matters to is the judge that was on the sideline, and he threw the flag, so that pulled that back. But Daniel Jones had a great game, 250 yards, 1 touchdown, no interceptions, 95 rushing yards, and I think I always thought that the game would be won on with whoever could rush the ball or run the ball better. They had no answer. The football team had no answer for the RPO and the rush to the outside that Daniel Jones was doing. He did it 10 times for, like I say, for 100 yards. So I don't know. It was just frustrating. And then jumping offside at the end, it's Billy Basics. Joe Judge, our coach, is a former special teams coach, so it must have killed him inside. Yeah, it was just frustrating. I felt like there was a lot of calls that went against us, as a lot of teams have had this week, that weren't particularly egregious or even obvious. But the refs have their way of doing things. I'm sure the football team feel that the Chase Young roughing the passer was a little bit soft. I mean, I think he did land on him, but if that had been the Giants the opposite way round, I'd have been livid that the flag got through for that. But
yeah, it actually looked like a decent sack. But yeah. Swings and roundabouts, these things do come around. I think from my side, the Giants played a good game. They did. They looked like the better team on the pitch that day. Daniel Jones looked by far the better quarterback, albeit Henneke didn't look bad.
No,
I think that, as you said a couple of weeks ago, Dave, I think this is actually a positive for the Washington football team at the moment, having had to use him as opposed to use Fitzmagic. I think that they're going to get some productivity out of him, and at least it gives him some experience. He's a young guy who wants to play. But Daniel Jones looked like the better quarterback, like you said. They didn't have any response for the run play option. He was pretty clinical with a few of his passes. He actually was rated PFF's top quarterback this week. And we had some good performances. Yeah. Kyler Murray, Tom Brady, Russell Wilson, Patrick Mahomes. But he was rated PFF's top quarterback this week. He protected the ball. He threw very accurately downfield, passes over 10 yards. So he was fantastic. And, you can't carry a team, and unfortunately it felt like Daniel Jones was carrying the team. They didn't give Saquon anywhere near as many touches as I thought they would. Luckily, I pulled him out of my fantasy team before that game because I just thought that might happen. But other than that, Sterling Shepard looked really, really solid. Your defense just looks a little bit weak. It just looks a bit weak.
It's poor. One sack from Azeez Ojulari. It's just there's just no. I almost want to go back to when we were talking about who we'd sign and who we'd slap, and we need some pass rush. There's just nothing there at the minute, and I think both his sacks have been coverage sacks as well, where the quarterbacks had the ball for like 5 or 6 seconds. So
who would you sign? Chandler Jones?
Oh, I don't know. Aaron Donald. We need some pressure up the middle. I think it's just so bad when like you're investing so much money into these. Leonard Williams, he's not getting any pressure. He's not playing like in the way he should have been last year, and maybe that's because we lost Dalvin Tomlinson, so that pressure up the middle's gone. It's just tough. I mean, the unsung hero is 100% Graham Gano. He had a stellar game, 5 for 5. I mean, I think he's
Giants kicker, yeah.
Yes, he's the Giants kicker. So I think he's kicked 34, 35 consecutive field goals, and he was banging them from 50 yards plus in this game.
Yeah, he looked epic.
He was very good.
If only the Vikings had him, eh?
Yeah, and that's... Yeah. I don't want to dwell too much on the Giants, so I'm kind of over it now. It was a Thursday night game, so I've had a lot of time to sort of let it sink in and move on to the next one. But got the Falcons next, which hopefully will be a win. But we shall see.
Yeah, like I said, a lot of positives to take away from both the Seahawks and the Giants. I think they weren't just losses that were easy losses. No. There's a lot to take away from those games. So that's what I'm telling myself anyway. We'll hang on to that very thin branch for as long as we can.
So I cry myself to sleep.
Now we'll just move on really, really quickly to talk about some of the major injuries. Just footnotes as to what that might have an effect on with this season so far. So injuries that we've hit are the Eagles. Brandon Graham's gone down, probably their best pass rusher and defensive lineman. Is that going to affect them too much, Dave, or do you think that they're still just going to be pretty average and won't really affect too much?
I think he had a positive impact on their pass rush game. He was playing well, so I think it will definitely have an impact on them. But the issue for him is, I think, he's just old, isn't he? So
yeah,
if it's an Achilles, that's such a such a bad injury to come back from, especially when your job is to give 100% every single snap to try and beat you're pressing off with them, you're pushing off with your legs, and I just think it could be his career done, which is sad for an Eagles fan and sad for a football fan in general. But I won't miss him coming through my Giants O-line.
No, definitely not. So the next big injury, which came out after the game, was the Browns and Jarvis Landry.
Yeah,
I think that's a bigger impact for them.
Oh yeah, especially if it is an ACL. They've just had Odell Beckham coming off that, who's not actually come back yet. So, I mean, every medical department treats their injuries differently. But if Odell Beckham's not back off his ACL yet, and Jarvis Landry's gone down with an ACL, that's their number one and number two wide receiver gone.
Yeah.
I mean, they've got some very good tight ends, but it limits your ability to stretch the field and put pressure on the back end of defenses, which means they can then start loading the box, which will then have problems for your running game and for your tight ends. So we've got to contend with that sort of congested middle of the field. Yeah,
I think it's quite a big loss. Well, a very big loss for the Browns, I think, especially if they don't get Odell back. If it's a straight swap and they can, drop Landry out and bring Odell in, impact is less. But he's an underrated player, is Jarvis Landry. I think he does a lot of work that people maybe don't see, and he catches everything. He's got massive hands. So, yeah, it could be a problem. Steelers, TJ Watt has done his groin, but I think that it could just be maybe one game or 2 games, but that's a big loss if they have lost TJ Watt. Led the league in sacks last year. He's looked like a proper machine in the opening game and a half. So yeah, that's not a good one for the Steelers if they lose him, right?
No, dominant force. He's proved every penny worth of the contract they gave him, so that'll be a big loss for them.
Maybe not so much of a big loss. The Colts lose Carson Wentz, as we spoke earlier, to two sprained ankles because he's weak.
Yeah, I mean, I've said it before. He's like a kicker, and he just snaps under the slightest bit of pressure. I might even have to downgrade him from a Kit Kat to a hobnob. Not even a hobnob. Hobnob's hard. He's a digestive. He's a chocolate digestive.
Yeah. What about Rich T? Rich T's a limp.
Yeah, renowned for being weak.
He's a Rich T.
Yeah.
Bland, limp. Dolphins. That's a good segment. That is. What football players are what biscuits? Yeah. Maybe next week.
What biscuit is Wentz this week?
Dolphins Tua. They've lost Tua Tagovailoa to broken ribs. Again, he's also a sick note.
Yeah. It's just, again, you know what I mean. He's not. I don't think he came out of Alabama being such a good quarterback that I think. I don't know. He's not proven to be that so far in the league, and I think that could be an issue for the Dolphins because they gave up Fitzmagic to hand the team over to Tua, but is that going to be a mistake?
I think really the main issue is that you've got Jacoby Brissett stepping in, and he was terrible. So that's not something that you want. And then lastly, we're going to talk about the Sky Sports games. So for those who are watching over in the UK, there are a number of games on Sky Sports this week. In fact, all of which are worth a watch. So if you've got Sky Sports, you don't usually watch football, give it a go. One of the games that we've got is potentially the game of the week, but then the next one I'm going to talk about is potentially the game of the week. So there's 2 there at least. The first one being the LA Chargers are playing the Kansas City Chiefs. What do you reckon to that one, Dave? That one, to me, not necessarily the game of the week because of the sort of limp week that the Chargers had. For me, it's more of a Chiefs need to come out and make a bit of a statement, get back on track.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's a battle of the gunslingers, isn't it? But the Chiefs team is far better than the Chargers team. The LA Chargers, they've looked average. I think we have to play them, but I'm not actually that worried about them. To pair what it was last year with them, but I think the Chiefs have comfortably got that down. The Chargers aren't putting up big numbers like I thought they would. I just think the Chiefs. That's the Chiefs to lose. Yeah,
that's a Chiefs win for me as well. Next game on Sky Sports is the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, reigning Super Bowl champions. Tom Brady, the GOAT at the helm, playing the LA Rams, which is it's a bit of a nightmare offense v defense, right? You got two very, very strong opponents there.
Yeah, so you've got the Aaron Darnold against the Chiefs' offensive line, which is the Bucs' offensive line, which has looked very, very good. And then on the back end, you've got like the Mike Evans versus Jalen Ramsey battle.
Mm-hmm. It's always a good one.
The number one corner versus the number one wide receiver. So yeah, I mean, I imagine the Bucs are gonna come away with a win there, but the Rams, you can't take the Rams for granted, especially with Stafford's ability to take the top off teams with his arm.
That's potential NFC Championship game, I think, in my books, I would say. Then we've got Green Bay Packers playing the San Francisco 49ers.
Some good games. Some
really good games on Sky Sports. If you don't watch football and you're a football fan, get on it, because this is a proper spectacle of games. This is.
Yeah, get on Now TV, get that 24-hour pass, get these games watched.
Now TV paying you or something?
Yeah, on the side. Yeah. So what's that? Rodgers against Garoppolo. Again, I would imagine that the better quarterback there is probably the team's going to win. Although the Niners defense is a savage, and I suppose if they can get hold, we know one thing that rattles Rodgers is when he's got pressure in his face a lot.
Yeah,
and if any team can get amongst him, it'll be the Niners. So
yeah, we'll see how that one goes. And then lastly, I guess the only thing that makes this one an exciting game is it's a pretty big divisional game. That's the Philadelphia Eagles playing the Cowboys. That's potentially the worst game on paper for you to watch, Dave. Absolute stinker.
Yeah, I'd rather cut my eyes out, if I'm honest with you, than watch that game. But yeah, I mean, the good thing is that somebody's got to lose, and if I did want a team to win, I would say it'd be the Eagles.
Okay, cool. I think the Cowboys comfortably take this one, but I don't care who wins. I'd like it to be a tie.
In an ideal world, it'll get postponed and they'll both get lost. But
yeah, so that's how I see it. And that's everything. That's everything that's on Sky Sports. That is the end of our third podcast. So thank you very much for listening. If you've listened to the end, peace.